I still remember the smell of the coffee. It was coming from a metal urn at the back of the funeral home. Dark roast, strong, the kind my wife Elaine used to buy without checking the label because she already knew she liked it. People were still lining up to shake my hand. Quiet voices, soft pats on the shoulder, someone saying she was a wonderful woman, over and over again like it was a script. That's when my daughter Laura took my elbow and guided me into the side hallway. Not roughly, just firmly enough that I followed. The hallway smelled like lilies and furniture polish. The lights were brighter there. Too bright. She had her phone out, turned sideways, documents already open on the screen. She didn't ease into it. "Dad," she said, low and controlled. "Your comfortable life just ended. You need to sign these now or you're going to lose everything." I didn't answer right away. 3 days earlier, I'd buried my wife of 40 years. My ears were still ringing from the service. My chest still felt hollow, like someone had removed something important and forgotten to close the space. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My voice sounded older than it had a week earlier. Laura didn't look upset. Her makeup was perfect. Her black dress was pressed. Her husband Mark stood a few steps behind her, arms crossed, close enough that I couldn't walk past without brushing him. "You're not capable of handling things right now," she said. "You're grieving. You're confused. I've already talked to a lawyer." I stared at her phone. Scrolled text, signatures, boxes waiting to be checked. "Elaine died on Tuesday," I said. "It's Friday. Can we not do this here?" Mark stepped forward. "Frank," he said, using my name like he was calming a client. "Be reasonable. Laura's trying to help you." Laura put her hand on my arm, the same hand I'd held when she learned to ride a bike. "I love you," she said. "That's why I need you to sign. Mom would want me to take care of things." "What things?" I asked. "The house," she said. "It's too much for you now. Too many memories. We need to sell it before you make mistakes." People were starting to drift toward the hallway. I could see Elaine's sister watching us, her smile gone, concern taking its place. Laura leaned closer. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," she said. "But it's happening." I didn't sign anything. I told her we'd talk later when I could think clearly. She left the funeral home without saying goodbye to anyone else. The next morning, I woke up alone. The other side of the bed was cold. Sunlight came through the curtains because I'd forgotten to close them. For a few seconds, I forgot why the house felt wrong. Then I remembered everything. I went downstairs to make coffee. That's when my card was declined, then my debit card, then my phone buzzed with messages from the bank, all time-stamped just before dawn. "Your accounts have been temporarily restricted." I stood there in my kitchen, barefoot on the tile, staring at the screen. And that was the moment I realized my daughter hadn't been bluffing. I put the phone down on the counter, and I waited. I stood there longer than I needed to. The coffee maker was still warming up, humming softly, like it always did. The smell should have been comforting. Instead, it felt misplaced, like it belonged to another version of my life. I tried my credit card again, declined. Then my debit card. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my phone. 3 emails from the bank, all sent just after 3 in the morning. The wording was polite and vague. Temporary restriction. "For your protection, please contact us." I called the number listed. After 20 minutes on hold, a woman answered. Her voice was calm, professional, practiced. "Mr. Harris," she said, "your accounts have been flagged due to concerns about your mental capacity." "My what?" I asked. "We received documentation indicating you may be experiencing cognitive decline," she continued. "Until a review is completed, all accounts are frozen." "What documentation?" I asked. "A notarized statement from a physician," she said. "Your daughter has submitted paperwork to become your power of attorney." I felt the words land one at a time. "I don't have dementia," I said. "I understand this is upsetting," she replied. "But until the review is complete, we can't release funds." I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking now. Not panic, not yet. Something colder, like a door closing somewhere behind me. I tried calling my doctor's office, closed for the weekend. I called my brother James in Pittsburgh, straight to voicemail. I left a message I didn't plan, just said my name and told him to call me back as soon as he could. Then I called Laura. She answered on the first ring. "Dad," she said like she'd been expecting it. "What did you do?" I asked. "I protected you," she said. "I told you yesterday this was happening. You froze my accounts." "Temporarily," she said, "until we get you settled somewhere safe." "Somewhere safe?" "There's a memory care place outside Akron," she said. "Mark knows someone there. We can get you in quickly." "I'm not going to a memory care facility," I said. "I'm fine." There was a pause, then her voice cooled. "Dad, I have a doctor's statement," she said. "I have witnesses. If this goes to court, you'll lose." "What doctor?" I asked. "I haven't seen anyone." "Dr. Collins," she said. "He's been treating you for months." I'd never heard the name. "You don't remember," she said. "That's the problem." She told me she was coming by the next morning, 10 o'clock, with a real estate agent. We needed to start preparing the house. I hung up and sat there until the coffee went cold. The house felt different after that, too quiet, like it was listening. I walked upstairs to Elaine's office. She'd handled most of our paperwork. She liked things labeled, ordered, predictable. I opened the filing cabinet and found a folder with Laura's name written across the tab in Elaine's handwriting. Inside were printed emails. I started reading. And that's when I realized this hadn't started at the funeral. It had started long before. I sat down slowly in Elaine's chair, the folder open on my lap, papers slipping toward the floor. Outside, a car passed. Someone laughed down the street. Life moving on, unaware. I didn't cry. I just kept reading. Then I waited. The emails were printed in order. Elaine had dated them carefully, stapled some, highlighted others. She'd always been methodical like that, quietly thorough. The first message was from Laura, sent just over a year earlier. She was asking for money, not casually, not as a favor, as a solution. She said Mark's business was struggling, cash flow issues, temporary. She needed $50,000 and promised it would be paid back within 6 months. Elaine's reply was short, calm, clear. She said we were retired, that we couldn't risk that kind of money. She suggested Laura talk to a bank. Laura wrote again 2 weeks later, smaller amount, more urgency, then again and again. Each time, Elaine said no, not harshly, not accusing, just no. The last email was dated 3 months before Elaine died. I read it twice before it settled. Laura wrote that she was tired of being told no, that we didn't understand how bad things were, that if Elaine was gone, everything would be simpler. She mentioned the house, estimated its value, wrote that I wouldn't last long on my own anyway. I lowered the papers onto the desk and sat there without moving. The room felt smaller than it had a minute earlier. Elaine had known. She hadn't said anything to me, not because she was hiding it, because she was protecting me while she still could. A knock at the front door broke the quiet. I stood up slowly and went downstairs, looked through the glass beside the door. A police officer stood on the porch, young, uniform crisp, one hand resting lightly on his belt. I opened the door. "Mr. Harris?" he asked. "Yes. I'm Officer Reynolds," he said. "Your daughter requested a wellness check. She was concerned about you living alone." "Of course she did." "I'm fine," I said. "My wife passed away. I'm grieving. That's all." He nodded sympathetically. "She mentioned memory issues," he said, "forgetting to eat, leaving appliances on." "That didn't happen," I said. He studied my face for a moment. "Not suspicious, just careful." "Are you in danger?" he asked. "No." "Are you a danger to yourself?" "No." He relaxed slightly. "Then there's not much I can do here," he said. "This sounds like a civil matter. You may want to speak to an attorney." He left a few minutes later. I stood on the porch and watched him drive away. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "The officer said you're doing okay. I'm relieved. See you tomorrow at 10. Please have the house ready. The agent will need photos." I didn't respond. That night, I didn't sleep. Sometime after 3, I went back to Elaine's office and made copies of everything in that folder. Emails, notes, dates. I hid the originals in a box in the garage labeled holiday decorations. Laura never looked in the garage. Sunday morning, I heard a car in the driveway earlier than expected. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, listening to the knock grow louder. Then my phone rang. I let it ring. When I finally opened the door, Laura walked in like she already owned the place. Mark followed, and behind them was a woman holding a tablet and a camera. "This is Denise," Laura said. "She's the agent." Denise looked at me, uncertain. "Is this your house, sir?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And you want to sell it?" "No." Denise didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry," she said to Laura. "I can't proceed without the owner's consent or valid power of attorney." Laura's face tightened. "He has dementia," she said. "I have documentation." Denise shook her head. "That's not enough." She left quickly. Laura stepped closer to me. "I can still do this," she said, "with or without you." I looked at her calmly. "Get out of my house." She did. When the door closed, I didn't move. I reached for Elaine's address book, and I dialed the number of the one person she'd trusted to handle our affairs, her lawyer. Then I waited. Paul answered on the third ring. "Paul Whitaker," he said. "This is Frank Harris," I told him. "You handled Elaine's estate planning years ago." There was a pause, then his voice softened. "Frank, I'm very sorry about Elaine. How can I help?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I told him exactly what had happened. The funeral home, the frozen accounts, the doctor I'd never met, the emails Elaine had printed and filed away. When I finished, the line was quiet. "This is serious," Paul said finally. "Your daughter is committing financial abuse." "Can you help me?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "But we need to move quickly. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" "My accounts are frozen," I said. "I don't have access to anything." "Don't worry about payment," he replied. "Bring whatever documentation you have." That was the first moment I felt something shift. Not relief. Direction. Monday morning, I drove to Paul's office just after 8. The parking lot was nearly empty. His assistant made coffee and didn't ask questions. Paul came out in a golf shirt and jeans, legal pad already in his hand. "Let's start from the beginning," he said, slowly. I talked for nearly an hour. He asked questions, dates, names, exact wording. He wrote everything down, never interrupted, never looked at me like I was confused. When I finished, he leaned back. "First," he said, "there is no licensed physician by the name your daughter provided. I already checked." I let that sit. "So the document she gave the bank is fraudulent," he continued. "That gives us leverage." He explained the steps clearly. Step 1, an emergency motion to unfreeze my accounts. Step 2, a formal notice to the bank that they'd acted on falsified medical information. Step 3, a restraining order to keep Laura away from me and the property. "And the power of attorney?" I asked. "She doesn't have one," he said, "and she won't get one." By Tuesday evening, my accounts were unfrozen. The bank called to apologize, more than once. Wednesday morning, Paul called again. "I pulled some public records," he said. "Your son-in-law filed for bankruptcy last week. They're facing foreclosure." That explained a lot. "There's more," he added. "Your daughter's employer will be discovering missing funds soon. She's been covering holes." I sat quietly and listened. "This is going to escalate," Paul said, "and it's not going to be pleasant." I understood that. Thursday morning, 2 detectives came to my house. I showed them the emails, the bank records, the forged documents Laura had tried to use. They asked me if I had somewhere safe to stay. That afternoon, my brother James arrived and stayed with me. On Friday, 1 week after Elaine's funeral, Laura was arrested. She called me from the station that evening. "Dad," she said, crying now, "please, you have to stop this." I closed my eyes. "You did this," I said. "Not me." I put the phone down, and for the first time since Elaine died, the house felt quiet in a different way. like the shouting had finally stopped. Then I waited. The formal meeting happened the following Monday. Not at my house, not at the police station. In a conference room at Paul's office, with the blinds half open and a legal pad placed neatly in front of each chair. Laura came in with her attorney, a man in his 40s who kept adjusting his tie and avoided eye contact with me. Mark wasn't there. I noticed that immediately. Paul nodded to everyone and sat down, calm, unrushed. "No one is here to argue," he said. "We're here to establish facts." Laura's eyes were red. Her posture wasn't. She sat upright, hands folded, like this was a meeting she expected to win. Paul began with documents, bank records first, timestamps, the exact moment the fraudulent letter had been submitted, the notary seal, the name of the doctor, then a printed page from the provincial medical registry. "No physician by that name exists," Paul said, tapping the page once. "Not now, not ever." Laura opened her mouth. Paul didn't look at her. "Next," he said, "the emails." He slid copies across the table. Laura didn't reach for them. "These were printed and filed by Elaine over a year," Paul continued. "They show repeated requests for money, escalating language, and a clear reference to the value of the house." Laura's attorney shifted in his chair. Paul moved on. "Finally," he said, "the attempted real estate listing without consent, combined with the wellness check request and false claims of incapacity." He paused. "This establishes intent," Laura spoke then. Her voice was sharp. "He's grieving," she said. "He doesn't remember things clearly." Paul looked at me. "Frank," he said, "would you like to respond?" I didn't raise my voice. "I buried my wife 3 days before my daughter tried to take control of my life," I said. "I remember that clearly." Laura looked down. Paul folded his hands. "At this point," he said, "the criminal investigation is proceeding independently. What we're discussing here is boundaries." He slid one more document forward, a restraining order. "Laura," he said, "you are not to contact your father directly. You are not to visit his home. Any necessary communication goes through counsel." Her attorney leaned toward her and whispered. She shook her head. "This isn't fair," she said, finally looking at me. "You're choosing lawyers over your own daughter." I met her eyes. "No," I said. "I'm choosing clarity." There was nothing else to say. The meeting ended without raised voices, without insults, without apologies. When Laura left, she didn't look back. Paul closed the door and exhaled slowly. "You did the right thing," he said. "I know," I replied. That evening, James and I sat at my kitchen table. He made soup. I washed the dishes. Ordinary things. Later, when the house was quiet, I walked through each room and turned off the lights one by one, not in grief, in order. Then I waited. The case moved faster than I expected. Once the bank acknowledged the forged documents, everything else followed in order. Timelines lined up, records matched. There was no room left for interpretation. Laura's employer discovered the missing money within a week. Internal audit. Transaction logs. Amounts small enough individually to hide, large enough together to matter. Over $60,000. Her attorney stopped returning calls after that. Mark was charged as well. Conspiracy, helping submit false paperwork, pressuring third parties. He avoided me entirely. I was told later he'd been trying to distance himself from everything for months. I didn't attend the hearings in person. Paul advised against it. Said there was nothing I needed to prove by being there. So I stayed home. I cleaned out Elaine's office slowly, one drawer at a time. I shredded nothing that mattered. I kept what did. I put her books back on the shelf in the order she liked, not because it was necessary, because it felt right. In December, Laura accepted a plea agreement, 18 months in custody, probation after, mandatory restitution where possible, a permanent restraining order. Paul called me the afternoon it was finalized. "It's done," he said. I thanked him and hung up. That night, Laura called from the detention center. James was sitting across from me at the table when the phone rang. He didn't say anything, just stayed where he was. "Dad," Laura said. Her voice sounded smaller now. "Please, you have to drop this. I made mistakes." I listened. "I was scared," she said. "I thought if I didn't act fast, Everything would fall apart. I closed my eyes. Your mother knew what you were doing, I said. She kept records. She was protecting us. That's not true, Laura said quickly. She loved me. She did, I said. That's why she didn't give you what you were asking for. There was silence on the line. If I go to prison, I'll lose everything, she said. You lost everything when you decided to lie, I replied. This isn't something I can fix. I ended the call. James put his hand on my shoulder. I let myself lean there for a moment, just long enough. The sentencing happened the week before Christmas. I didn't go. Paul attended on my behalf. He told me later that the judge spoke directly to Laura, said betrayal doesn't need shouting to be severe, said exploiting grief is still exploitation, said family doesn't excuse crime. After that, the noise stopped. No more calls, no more messages, no more threats disguised as concern. Just quiet. The house felt different again, not empty, settled. I slept through the night for the first time since Elaine passed. In the morning, I made coffee, dark roast, just the way she liked it. And I sat at the table until it cooled. Then I waited. Spring came slowly that year. I noticed it in small ways, lighter mornings, the sound of traffic returning earlier, the way the kitchen filled with sun again around 8 instead of 9. I sold the house in April, not in a rush, not out of fear, just because it was time. It held too many chapters and I didn't need to live inside all of them to remember who I'd been. I moved into a condo near my brother, smaller, quieter, 1 floor. I learned the rhythm of the building within a week. The elevator that paused too long on 3. The neighbor who watered plants every morning at the same time I made coffee. I kept a routine. Up early, coffee first. The same dark roast Elaine liked. I still buy it without checking the label. Twice a week, I walked to the community center. I joined a grief support group at first. Listened more than I spoke. Then I stayed on as a volunteer, helping seniors who needed help reading paperwork or understanding letters that felt intimidating. I don't give advice, I just explain what words mean. That feels useful. Laura wrote a few letters from prison. I read the first 2. They circled the same points: fear, justification, requests framed as apologies. I stopped opening them after that. Maybe one day I will again. Today isn't that day. I met someone through the volunteer work. Her name is Marianne. She lost her husband years before I lost Elaine. We talk. Sometimes we sit quietly with coffee and don't talk at all. That's enough. Paul still checks in on me. Legally, there's nothing left to manage. Personally, he says it helps to know I'm doing fine. He brings news sometimes, other cases, other families, situations that sound familiar in the details even when the names change. That's when I realized how often this happens. Not loudly, not suddenly. Quiet pressure, soft threats, documents pushed across tables while someone is still grieving. A man in my building mentioned his son last week, said visits had slowed, said paperwork was getting complicated. He laughed it off. I listened. Sometimes stories don't need fixing right away. Sometimes they just need someone to notice them. On Elaine's birthday, I visited her grave. I brought sunflowers, sat for a while, told her I was okay, that I was learning how to live again without shrinking. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird kept singing like nothing had changed. At home that evening, I cleaned the kitchen, put the mug upside down on the rack, set the alarm for the morning. Ordinary things, steady things. That's what peace looks like for me now. If this story stayed with you, you're welcome here. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps keep this space calm and growing. And if you'd like, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read more of those than you might expect. 2 familiar stories will be waiting next.